Hi and welcome to Ovacco's webinar in Carbon Neutral Now. My name is Anna Dansk and I'm Head of Marketing Communications at Ovacco. You can see today's agenda here. We will talk about our work with carbon neutral, many things. But the presenters today are Göran Nyström, Head of Marketing and Technology at Ovacco, and then we have Katarina Kangert, Head of Sustainability and Safety here at Ovacco, and Nicholas Kjellsäter, our own Chief Financial Officer. So, most welcome to our webinar.
So, thank you, Anna. Göran Nyström is my name, and I'm happy to be first out to present for you some details of Ovacco and our journey into carbon neutral now. As you can already see on this picture, we have a good position. We are 80 or even 95% lower than the CO2 footprint in the world, and we will talk more about that. But we are roughly shortly under 3,000 employees, and we also pride ourselves in our safety record. And we are a specialist producer of long engineering steel, and I'm sure you all know about this. We also belong to the Japanese group Nippon Steel. But we're not here to talk about our company primarily, but what we do with regards to sustainability. First of all, we can note that we come from a long history. It's in our genes to work with steel, in our DNA. We have steel making traditions that go back long time, even longer than 500 years actually. And I think also it's important to point out that the products that we supply also do a lot of environmental good in the end use applications. And to meet that goal, we need to produce more than 500 different types of steel grades, and we work closely with customers then in many demanding industry sectors. And of course, we need to invest in R&D, in production technology, and also in time spent with customers and end users to really understand the challenges ahead. So we consider ourselves a world leader in steel circularity and carbon neutrality. And I think, as I mentioned, the first and foremost thing that we do is that we supply products that meet high demands and can enable other end-use products to save carbon dioxide in the world. But beyond that, our production is now 100% carbon neutral since 1st of January. And beyond that, we also have a leading carbon footprint. Our products are based 97% on scrap. And not only that, we're not resting on this position. We are taking actions to further our position. So we want to take leadership in a number of interesting projects, and we will talk about that today. But don't take my words for this. You can also listen to Nomura, which is a bank, a financial institute in Japan. It's a big one. And then they, in their analysis, puts us really at the very top. So you can see here, or you can hardly see it, it's our footprint, top left, which is the far best carbon footprint in the world. And bottom left, you see the ambitions, 80% reductions. That's what we're aiming for until 2030. And then finally, to the right, you can also see the target years for achieving carbon neutrality. And I'm trying to point here, we're working with a green screen, so I'm a little bit not so good at this, but you can see, there you go, somewhere, 2022, that's us. And I think the rest of the league is at around 2050, almost every one of them. So we're really taking actions to live up to carbon neutral now. And with that, I want to hand over to Katarina Kangert.
Yes, I would like to start to talk about our carbon footprint. And also, I would like to start with our great starting point, where we are today. And this comes from, as Göran said, a long history of working with lowering our environmental impact. We have a 97% recycled steel. We use 100% fossil-free electricity sources. We have sustainable, efficient processes. For example, we have worked for many years now with converting all our heat treatment process to electricity, fossil-free electricity. And this has resulted in us having 95% lower carbon footprint for steel making, and also 80% lower when it comes to cradle-to-gate footprint for hot roll bar. And this saves 2 tons of CO2 compared to the global average when buying 1 ton of hot roll product. We had reduced our CO2 emissions from already very low baseline with 55%, and had successful full-scale trials to heat steel with hydrogen fossil-free, with 100% fossil-free hydrogen. And there's many ways to measure the carbon footprint, and we prefer and we really like the cradle-to-gate method. We think this is the best method. And as you can see here, we have the different processes, upstreams, our steel making, rolling, further processing, and downstreams. And in the cradle-to-gate, you get the full and complete measure of carbon dioxide emission. And it covers everything from the upstreams that's inherent in the final product to everything inside our gates, both our process emissions and the use of energy. And this is the true CO2 intensity measurement. And we calculate according to the ISO 14025. And also this represents the handover to the next level of trade. When a customer to us wants to calculate their carbon footprint, they can easily use our carbon footprint as we have it cradle to the gate to our gates. It includes voting with a wallet, for example, selecting suppliers based on a carbon footprint. And this is the measure we communicate, because this is the right message. Many of our competitors and peers prefer to show the figures for carbon dioxide per ton of crude steel. And this is what the world often talks about. But and this only includes the steel making and not the rolling, the further processing, or the upstreams. And even though in this comparison, Ovako has a very strong position with a group average below 90 kgs of CO2 per ton of crude steel. But we feel this is not representative of the product that is shipped to the next level of trade, because it doesn't include all the processes, and it doesn't include the yield losses. It only includes this very small part, as you can see on the steel production. Smedjebacken has a particularly strong position in this comparison. Hofors has a bit of a higher emission, but still much below global average, and that is because of a different process. And Ovako's emissions in the steel making process is 95% below global average. What we think the world should talk about, as I already mentioned, is the cradle to gate. And what is the scope for cradle to gate? It's all of our scope 1 and 2. And this is all our process emissions, it's all the energy we use, and all the production steps of Ovako. And it's also adding scope 3 upstreams. And scope 3 upstreams, it's all the emissions inherent in the product. For example, the alloys, the scrap, the lime, everything. For a product to be carbon neutral, the upstream sources must also be included. But we have not taken that step yet. Although we work very actively together with our suppliers base to find the best sources for our incoming material. Our suppliers as well are working to lower their carbon footprint, and we have a lot of cooperation with them. We can also give the specific values for a specific product through our carbon footprint calculator. And this has made us that from the 1st of January 2022, we are the first in steel with fully carbon neutral operations. And this is all our scope 1 and 2 emissions, everything in our operation that now are carbon natural. We're doing that by counterbalancing our emissions with carbon offsets. And this is a step to continue our journey towards zero carbon emissions. And we have a path to zero carbon emissions. We have planned activities to reach this zero carbon emissions. And here you can see our total tons of CO2, and we have reduced them with 55% from 2015. And we have done that through many different activities, like choosing to buy fossil-free electricity. We have converted our heat treatment to electricity. We have done other conversions from oil and propane and many other things. The next step is to lower our CO2 emissions with 80% to 2030 and to 90% to 2040. And we also have a plan for that. And the main activity is our hydrogen initiative, which Göran Nyström will tell you more about.
Thank you, Katarina. And we then move to some of the forward-oriented actions. And the first and foremost important action is indeed the hydrogen initiative, which I'm sure that you've heard about. And I'll try to summarize this in some short slides. First of all, what Katarina mentioned is true. We have electrified our heat treatment. So almost all of the furnaces for heat treatment up to 1000 degrees are direct electric heated. And the same is true, of course, for the melting of the steel. We have electric arc furnaces. So in those areas we have taken some really big steps historically. And I need to point out one more thing, and that is that in our heating furnaces that where we use fossil fuels like the rest of the world does, we are also using oxygen, so-called oxy-fuel. So when we are burning propane or natural gas, we combine that with oxygen to have as efficient as possible method. That's good in itself, but also it reduces NOx emissions very dramatically. And NOx is interesting for another reason. NOx is kind of the companion to carbon dioxide. When you burn fossil fuels at high temperatures, you generate, if you burn them in air, then you generate a lot of NOx. And NOx can actually be seen from space. So we can't see CO2, but we can see NOx. And I took the liberty of using a slide here from a European satellite program. And if we can see this in the full picture mode, then you will see more clearly what it actually looks like around Europe. And you can see it's highly dependent on traffic, of course, but also on coal-fired power plants, on industrial heating, and so on. You can even see the boat traffic. You see the cargo traffic there around Gibraltar into the Mediterranean Sea. You can see a band of NOx emissions. So with this picture, you can actually see where do we have the biggest problems. And of course, Sweden is in quite a strong position already to start with. But we believe that the concept that we are applying is something that could potentially be used across Europe and across the world for that matter. And we believe today Sweden has an advantage, and we want to show the way, because whatever we do is actually a smaller improvement compared to the big emissions that we have in the rest of Europe. So how do we do this then? Well, we first started to use propane and oxygen, as I mentioned. And then we took this down to Linde's lab in Munich in Germany, and we basically just changed the hose from propane to hydrogen. So you can see in the bottom left picture, you can see hydrogen burning with oxygen. And you also see here the very volatile flame that you get from using propane, while with hydrogen it's much more stable. And that's because propane is a much bigger molecule than hydrogen and contains more energy per individual molecule. But of course hydrogen, with those very, very small molecules, they flow much more faster through the tube. So in the end we ended up with the same burning effect. The burner was adapted for 500 kilowatts, and I think we ended up with 498 or something like that when we changed to hydrogen. So that was a fantastic breakthrough for us, and with that we went back home, we reprogrammed our control systems, which you can see on the right. So there is a switch whereby you can switch from propane to hydrogen. Actually in a millisecond you can actually switch the fuel in the furnace from one to the other, which means we have true electricity flexibility in place with this. That's important, and I'll come back to that. So with that technical proof, we launched the concept and we started to go out and find financing opportunities. And to the right you can see an animation which shows you what will be Sweden's largest electrolyzer, which will help us to remove carbon dioxide from our own operations. When this is fully built in our sites, we will remove at least half of our CO2. And of course the heat will be used for municipal heating like we do today. And the electricity flexibility can be used to stabilize the power grid, increasingly important now that we add more wind and solar. And finally, a fantastic beauty of this concept is that once we have it in place, it's quite easy to scale it. And the reason we can scale it is because we are using so much oxygen for other purposes in our operations. So with that in mind, taking care of the heat, having the infrastructure, and taking care of the oxygen, we can also then allow a third party to use the hydrogen. That could be another industry nearby, or it could be, for instance, for fuel cell driven trucks. And as you can see to the left, bottom left, we have some logotypes. We have secured the support from Volvo, from Hitachi Energy, from H2 Green Steel, and from Nel. These four companies, together with the Swedish energy authorities, have supported us in mobilizing this project. And early next year it will be in place, and we will draw a lot of learnings from this. And hopefully a couple of years later we will be able to ship our products also by fossil-free deliveries all across Europe. So a very important project for us. Now, fuel cell trucks, is it going to be a reality? Well, it looks like that. Daimler and Volvo are the two biggest competitors in Europe, and they have actually joined together in April last year to form a venture called Cellcentric. So when they launched Cellcentric in April last year, they talked about a multiplicator effect. They say we will manage the vehicle technology eventually, but with a message to the politicians, we need the infrastructure and we need a cost parity. If one of these three factors fails, everything will fail. Cost parity, of course, means that we need more expensive diesel and cheaper hydrogen. Now, the concept that we are proposing is actually applicable to steel industries anywhere. And to the right, we have used a map from Eurofair that shows where all the steel production in Europe is. And you have to also consider that in addition to this, you have many sites with just rolling operations or forging operations where the concept is also applicable. And this means potentially the concept that we are proposing could be applied in so many different locations where heavy vehicle traffic would pass. So for Volvo, this is now a key interest to actually bridge the gap of that multiplicator equation. With this, we can provide the infrastructure, and yes, we can provide a world-leading low cost for fossil-free hydrogen. So the concept takes on a very strong interest among many parties across Sweden and Europe, and we are invited now to many discussions where we are talking about how to bring this further. And indeed, partnership is the new leadership. That's a slogan that you will hear more and more. We have seen now collaboration between steel, between vehicles, between high voltage companies and electrolyzers. and of course using the knowledge of burning gases and so on. These are classical, I would say, Swedish technological strengths, and we are able to combine them now in a new way that we haven't seen before. So that partnership, what we are forming, we hope will show the way for many other partnerships. And in saying that, you need to know also that we have not chosen to protect this by any patents, any IP. Instead, we are actively actually supporting others to learn from our experience. We have also taken the initiative to help to form something called the Mid-Sweden Hydrogen Valley, which is it's a collaboration between some 30-40 organizations in the middle of Sweden, where we have a lot of steel industries and also other industries and logistics and universities and so on that want to develop this thinking. So the communities are building for spreading this practice. And of course, our customers. Great thanks to all our customers who support us on this journey. It's going to be a reward for all of us in the end if we can manage to break through and remove the fossil fuel emissions from steel heating. So in summary, we could have stayed in a position where we have a environmental leadership. We could have been happy. We could have just watched the rest of the world move in that direction, and we could reap some benefits from this, but we're not satisfied. We're doing more. We are trying to tackle climate change very actively, and one of the key steps then is investing in hydrogen, using Nordic fossil-free electricity, and we're actively supporting initiatives to add more fossil-free electricity to the grid. We are building what will be Sweden's largest electrolyzer and try to bring that on stream as quickly as possible, and to the right to support and make proof of concept of the picture that you see to the right, which then includes broad societal benefits. Fossil-free hydrogen for refueling of fuel cell trucks, and residual heat used for district heating. And I think also from the furnaces where we are heating the steel, the new flue gas coming out will actually be water vapor. So we will condense that down to hot water also. So we will actually capture all the energy losses from the electrolyzer. We will take care of the hydrogen and the oxygen and the heat, and then the heat again in the furnaces and the flue gas from the furnaces. And on top of that, we provide benefits for the power grid and for fuel cell trucks. So I think I will stop there and hand over to Nicholas, who will tell us a little bit more about carbon neutrality through the offsets that we're working with.
Thank you, Göran. You heard from Göran and Katarina, we have a world-leading position in CO2, and that's the result of investments and a lot of efforts and commitment. But we're still not satisfied. We are doing more. So as of January of this year, we are using carbon offsets to counterbalance the remaining emissions, thereby reducing climate impact now. Carbon offset, and we focus on carbon offset projects within renewable energy and nature-based solutions. So we reduce global carbon emissions, contributing towards a globally sustainable society. And we use carbon offsets to counterbalance all Scope 1 and 2 emissions according to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and the relevant ISO standards. And we choose only projects that are verified by either the gold standard or the VCS, the verified carbon standard. And we hope and really count on the use of offsets to gradually decrease as we invest in new technology and improve our processes. So here is an example of a renewable energy project, a wind park in South Africa that will help replace coal-fired power generation in the country. So this is one example of a project that we support. And also we support nature-based solutions. This one is an example from Indonesia, where we are preserving a very big chunk of tropical forest. So this 64,000 hectares were slated to become palm oil estates, but through these projects, through the projects we support, this very important part of rainforest has been preserved for the future. So these are just examples. We pursue several projects across several geographies to make sure we remove carbon emissions immediately and right now this year. So thank you very much.
Yes, I will talk more about our targets and how we measure our carbon emissions. We have, as Göran already said, an already world leading position, and we're working towards even tougher targets for a more sustainable future. We have today already carbon neutral production, and also lowered our CO2 emissions in operations with 55%, and for a carbon footprint for hot rolled bar with 34%. And we have very tough targets. By 2030, we will reduce our CO2 emissions in operations by 80%, and for a carbon footprint for hot rolled bar with 60%. And the carbon footprint for hot rolled bar is, of course, all emissions, even upstreams as well. And for 2040, we will reduce it with 90% and 70%. And we are committed to the Science Based Targets initiative, and that is on the 1.5 degree target level. We are also supporting the UN-led Race to Zero campaign. We have, or as I said, committed to a science-based target, but it will take some time, unfortunately, until we will be approved, because at the moment the validation period for a science-based target is very long. It's more than a year, and that is because there are so many companies now that are committed to and applying for a science-based target. But we have started the process, and we're hoping it will not take too long. But these are our CO2 emission targets. We do have targets both on the emissions, which is the first one. Ooh, there. We also have other targets as well, of course, and this is to provide leading steel products for CO2 savings in the end usage. And here we are increasing number of different case studies to really show the improved climate profiles in our end application. And we really calculate these. We also make contributions to further improve the recyclability of steel, and for example actively pursue projects to reduce or eliminate concerns related to increasing level of copper in steel. And we show and publish our CO2 emissions through environmental product declarations. Environmental product declaration communicates verified, transparent and comparable information about the life cycle environmental impact of products. And this is all the different environmental impacts of these products. This is published on the international EPD homepage, environec.com. And this is done according to the different standards. It's based on life cycle analysis of our steel, and it's third-party verified. And the EPDs, I think, is a great tool to make comparison between different products. And it's also the base for our carbon calculator. We use the carbon calculator to calculate the CO2 footprint of a specific product. As Göran said before, we have 500 different types of steel grades. We also have many different types of further processing, to our products. We have many, many products. And with this tool, we can calculate the specific CO2 footprint for each individual product, which include all the further processing, all the different steel grades with different alloys, and as well the yield losses. And I will try to show now. The upstream steel mill and rolling mill is data from the life cycle analyze and the EPDs. So this is verified through the EPDs. And then we add the transport, any secondary rolling, further processing, anything that is added on to the specific products. And also we take into account the specific steel grade and the specific alloys in the steel grade. And from there we can calculate through this tool the specific carbon footprint. And this is reviewed and approved by the Swedish Research Institute RISE. And I think this could give, or this will give, a unique carbon footprint for each specific product for our customers to use when calculating their own footprint or similar. It's of course very important that all our data are correct and verified. All our emissions of greenhouse gases are calculated through the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and ISO 14064. They are verified by a third party yearly. At the moment it's KPMG that we verified that this emission data is correct. And it's published in our yearly sustainability report. We there will publish the amount of verified greenhouse gases emissions and the carbon offsets that we buy every year to show that we are truly have carbon neutral operations. This will also stated and explained in our declaration of carbon neutral production that you can find on our homepage, and also send how we calculate the carbon neutrality and also how this data is verified.
Thank you, Katarina. Yeah, we're getting used to this new system here, but I think it's working okay. I hope so. So in summary, it's about doing the right thing. Katarina can join me on stage shortly. Also, we will be answering some questions. But first of all, what it means for all of us, you can make these claims with confidence that using our supply, your products too, will be based 97% on recycled steel, which is an increasingly important factor in many industries now, trying to find a high degree of recycled content. And of course, our products are produced in a 100% carbon neutral process. So it's up to you how you handle that deal, if you want to work on our normal carbon footprint or consider the carbon neutrality. And then they are produced using fossil-free electricity sources from a supplier, us, that recycle or reuse 94% of all our residuals, and we are working hard on the rest as well. The steel making, even without offsets, is 95% below global average, and what we prefer is the cradle-to-gate footprint, where we are 80% below global average. So with this, we also provide the foundation to reduce your own footprint by 2 tons of CO2 per ton of product. That doesn't go away. It carries through the whole supply chain. And you can read more. We have a special pamphlet, a brochure that we call Carbon Neutral Now. And on our web page too, we keep up to date all the latest information and fact sheets relating to all these matters. This is a picture of our operations in Hällefors. It could actually be Smedjebacken or Hofors or Imatra or Boxholm. It all looks quite similar in the way that it's actually surrounded by forests and water. That's our heritage. We come from a heritage of being near the forests and the water and living in close symbiosis with the natural resources for the long term. And I think that is an important message to give. It's in our DNA in Sweden and in Finland to care about nature and preserving the nature as best we can. And I think that goes a long way to understand also why we are embarking on this journey, because we have now a roadmap, we have the technology, we have the possibility, we have the funding, and basically it's the right thing to do. And what we're saying is that it's needed, it's urgent in the world that we do things now. So many actions together, and many people, many collaborations, companies working together will help to make a better engineered future. And we have this logotype which we call carbon neutral now, and where you can see all the many actions coming together to form, closing the loop really, to form a better circularity and a better carbon dioxide footprint. So thank you very much for being with us on this journey, and thank you for joining this webinar. Now I believe we have received a few questions, but I will hand over to Katarina. I haven't seen the questions.
I just saw them very quickly. One question was, what is the difference between the process in Smedjebacken and Hofors? And of course the main reason is that we have an ingot process in Hofors and not in Smedjebacken, but I think Göran is better on the steel making part of this.
So yes, I mean of course it's two different types of steel making processes, and it's also we produce the most high clean steel variants and high carbon steel variants actually in Hofors. So to produce those grades takes a little more in terms of carbon footprint in the actual steel making, but still it's on a really low level. So
it's a bit higher than Smedjebacken, but it's still very much below the global average.
Yeah.
I think that was the question we had.
So that's only one question. Well, that's fantastic. I think it's you're more than welcome, all of you, to address us with questions in this area. We've tried to package things into content here, which we think is very relevant, but I'm sure there are many more aspects of this that we haven't covered. So let us know. We'll be happy to come back to you.
Please contact us with any questions. We love to talk about this. So,
as you can notice. Yeah. And now we have learned to manage the green screen as well, yes, maybe.
Sort of.
Sort of. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day, and we look forward to continue doing business with you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.